Welcome to Coffee Rants with Dan. I am the spiritual anarchist, Dan Arnold, your host. Tune in for what's really happening every Thursday. That's Thursday at 9 a.m. in Studio A on Revolution Radio. They keep us in fear to manipulate us. They want us ignorant so we're easier to enslave. They make us murder one another so they don't have to do it themselves. Only you can break their mind control by healing the contradictions within your belief systems that allow you to accept their lies in the first place. The time has come for us to remember our divinity, who we really are, to return to what we are meant to be, a service to others, to return to nature, and to reclaim our birthright, that which is freedom. The truth will sound belligerent because it is in direct opposition to lies. So get angry, because anger is sacred, and together we can unite and rise. Rise from this darkness. Humanity, assemble. And welcome to Morning Coffee Rants with Dan. I am the spiritual anarchist, Dan, your host. Today is November 14th in the year of not my Lord, 2024. I've been saying that for a while, but I think I'm going to change it up a little bit because the power of God is within you. We all have that divine spark. So it's going to be in the year of myself, 2024, and you can say that yourself as well. This is the number 1 listener-supported radio show in the world, and the number 1 donation listener-supported radio show in the world. So if you have a little bit of extra, go to the donation page and please give some. I am here every Thursday morning at 9 a.m. on revolution.radio in Studio A, taking a sip of my coffee. And I did absolutely no preparation for today's radio show. And my past radio shows, you're probably thinking, oh, wow, he prepped for those. Well, this one's even worse, folks. So stay tuned for the train wreck. Just kidding. One of the things I'm going to talk about and cover today, I'm going to continue with the what if, because what we see going on in the news is a lot of, things that are happening. And last week I talked about what if certain things happen. And I want to add that this episode is going to be the Coincidental Theorist episode. You heard that right. Not the conspiracy theorist episode, but it's going to be the what if and coincidental theorist episode, because we have a lot of cognizant dissonance going on and a lot of coincidental theorists out there who are ego entrenched and media entranced, and they are going to they've got a sports team like mentation. The team's going to have to win, and they're looking at everything in the world and who becomes the next slave master in chief of the United States is going to be able to fix everything. Like the whole world, is predicated upon that. So I got some things I'm going to talk about with that. But yes, the power of God is within you. And that's one of the things we have to remember to people out there who, I know some really good Christians who they believe that literally the only way to make it to heaven, and the kingdom of heaven is within you as well, is to believe that Jesus is this supernatural being. And, you'd only get to the Father through him. And I personally can tell you that you cannot, I've died twice, you cannot assign one gender to divinity when Hermetic principles very clearly tell us, and those are the natural laws of the universe, that gender is in all things. So these people, some of these Christians that I know are really good people, and they actually follow God's natural laws. So they're fine. I have no problem with what they believe. They can look at God however they choose to look at God. The more I'm researching, the more I'm finding out modern day religion goes back to ancient Egypt, and that's going to be other episodes. I've made this statement before, but I'll say it again. I think once you get to a certain point where you know certain things, you need to put it out there. You need to put your voice out there, to have some courage. And I continue to aggregate more knowledge as I go. So I'm going to tell what I know and aggregate as I go. And so I've come upon some really awesome research. I'm definitely living a very intriguing life, is what I would say right now. And I mean that in the most positive sense, in the midst of all this, craziness going on in the world. But I have a quote here from Aldous Huxley that I want to read. Unlike the masses, intellectuals have a taste for rationality and interest in facts. Their critical habit of mind makes them resistant to the kind of propaganda that works so well on the majority. When I watch mainstream news media, all I see, and I watch it on purpose at times, you need to, because it's predictive programming. It's predictive programming. Let me step back for a second. I'm also going to be finishing up my reading from Violence and Ego. With that said, go to you can go to my link tree, Spiritual Anarchist Dan Arnold link tree. You'll find me. You can find me on, if you want to get the books, you can go to, they're on a website, but I'm not really worried about selling books as much as I am about just telling what I know in the books. And in the next book, I'll definitely be doing a little bit more advertising. Let me take a sip of my coffee here. But predictive programming is when they start telling you, they start laying some things out there, so that way when these things happen or occur, you're like, wow, they knew it. They're getting you used to it. It's kind of like predictive analysis. Based on what's happened in humanity's past, in the 5 different extinction level events that I know of, that is scientifically out there, that we can predict that it's happening again. And there seems to be this power in this world, or this evil in this world, that is definitely against us. So predictive programming, if I'm going to get into some what ifs, I talked last week about what if President Trump doesn't actually get to take office because, Brandon is unfit. Of course, we all know that. These are all puppets. Okay, that's another thing too. No one's speaking plainly, and no one will speak plainly, anywhere. I don't see anyone speaking plainly who's actually known. They're all puppets. They're puppeticians. Okay, politics is for lunatics, and all ticks are parasites, and they're puppeticians. Okay. Egomaniacal lunatics who are sociopathic psychos. The ones who get in there, for good reasons, who want to try to enact change, they get swallowed whole or assassinated. We need to start asking those questions. Now, I personally know my spirit goes on. I know that this isn't the end. I know that I could come back here. There is reincarnation. There's so much I don't know now, though. Every time you think I know something, and I do know quite a bit, but then I start doing some other research or something comes into my peripherals, and I'm like, oh wow, it's a whole other rabbit hole. But I want to talk about predictive programming and what I was saying about last week. What happens if the current vice president, has to become the president because the current president is unfit? And then a few other things take place that make the left-wing base go completely insane, besides as insane as they are right now. And I'm not talking about moderate left. I'm talking about the far woke left. They know how to play to the human ego perfectly on both sides. All of you are in a cult. If you vote, you're in a cult. You're hoping this one ideology or the other, and they're really very close to the same ideology. It's about ruling you. Freedom is our birthright. We are all sovereign. This is what Jesus was trying to teach, where the kingdom of heaven is within you. Okay, the divine spark is within you. We are all fragments of God. And, the lost book of Thomas, I've said it before, I'll say it again. The lost book of Thomas, the Gnostic Gospels that they kept out of the Bible and out of these scriptures that were being found in the Middle East, that were purposely kept out of the New Testament. And the only reason why I bring up religion is because they're going to use religion and God as an excuse to commit even more atrocities. So what happens if Camilla takes the office of the highest, spot in the land as our ruler? She's not a leader. None of them are leaders. Leaders don't want to rule you. Leaders want to make you better. Leaders want to make you into a leader. Okay? And then with all the other stuff going on, a war breaks out, and Congress officially declares war before Trump can take office in January, and then the sitting president has to stay in place. Well, lo and behold, that was in the predictive programming news this past week. This is something I talked about a year ago. I don't want to be right on this stuff. I'm not patting myself on the back. I could give two shits less if I'm right. I want to be wrong about all of this. Unfortunately, I haven't been so far. Taking a sip of my coffee. They can't institute a new world government, an overt new world government, unless America is divided. And I'm seeing right now there's a lot of futility in trying to get this through to people who vote, because they've got this ego where their team has to win. They're not looking at everything else, which is why I read that quote from Huxley, because you don't even have to have a critical mind or critical thought process at this point. I call it common sense. I once had a trainer in the Marine Corps when I was down south, and he was a Southern trainer. He had this Southern drawl, and he was talking to us, and he was like, I don't believe in common sense, because if it was common, more people would have it. And I just don't see people thinking with common sense. So predictive programming in the last couple of years, they've been talking about all these different meteorites and these pass-bys, these asteroids that have flown by, I should say, that have flown by Earth, these close calls, some that have even passed as close as in between the Earth and the Moon. They're putting a lot of that out into the peripherals. Actually, since 1998, the movie Armageddon, there's been several movies they've put out, and now the news is constantly talking about it. Well, last week I seen a video where you've got China and Russia now that are doing some type of experiment near Antarctica. And they're both doing this stuff, wanting to exploit and see the resources of Antarctica. Although there was an accord signed in like 1939 that all of us would, all countries would agree to stay away from Antarctica, which is kind of weird. You can look that up if you'd like. But there was this huge anomaly that was spotted on radar from a satellite near that area that lasted for quite a while, and it took a while for it to get smaller. And what they're saying that Russia may have is a bomb that's used to hit the water, and it can create like a 10,000-foot wave. That's some scary stuff. So again, there's all this predictive analysis. So if something was to happen on a coastal area, remember, it was a meteorite. If we take this last 2 years, we look at over 100 factory chemical fires that were food processing plants or chemical plants. We've had poison air. If you look at a storm that can stay over land and stay strong, and don't think there isn't technology that could enhance weather, we have that technology. We're actually making human chimpanzee hybrids. They're doing it over in Japan. So organs can be harvested. I'm sorry, once you create a live being, it has a soul. That being is able to procreate on its own. Like if they made 2 of them, you don't have a right to do anything to that being. Humanity is trying to play God. The satanic cabal that runs this world is trying to play God. And Mother Earth is going to cleanse herself because of it. If you don't know what the end game is, if you can just try to figure out what the end game is based on predictive analysis on what's happened in the past and get a good grasp on what the end game is, you'll be able to look at all these different things that are happening and you'll be able to put them together and it'll start to make sense to you. This isn't some 5,000 piece puzzle. This is like a 9 or 10 piece puzzle that's really big that a preschooler would put together. Okay. And then you get your green or blue crayon out and you can connect the dots and then eat your crayon. I'm feeling myself like I'm about to go on a rant and I don't want to swear like I did. I dropped the F-bomb last week and I don't want to do that again. Let me take a sip of my morning coffee. So I know being anywhere within a 1 hour drive of any, of the East Coast or anything like that isn't someplace where I'd want to live personally. There's another hurricane threatening Florida. Florida is still recovering. South and North Carolina are recovering. There was another chemical fire in around Atlanta. People were ordered to stay inside. Going outside and breathing the air would kill them. So all these different transportation routes are being, you can't get through them. It's making transportation hard. If a military was going to enter this country, they wouldn't want a radioactive area to do it, but they'd want the area to be pretty barren, don't you think? Keep something in mind. What I'm talking about is tactical, plane of effects stuff. This stuff is the symptoms of the bigger problem. The bigger problem is people are trying to impose their wills upon one another. I see this in my personal life. I see this in people's personal lives. I see this in the big scale. People want to impose their ideology onto others. This country was founded to be free from ideology, to be free to worship a creator, however you choose. Okay? The Abrahamic religions are all trash. I'll say it again, they're all trash. They're fake. You've been lied to, you've been fooled, you've been bamboozled. When I think about, and I've seen this written someplace, I don't know, it might have been a meme, I'm not sure. But when I think of the Abrahamic religions, I think of Islam, I think of Judaism, and I think of Christianity. It's like 3 high school girls went to the prom wearing just slightly different dresses and spend the rest of the night at the prom arguing over who's got the best dress. And they're essentially the same dress. Yellow polka dotted dress with clown faces on it. I mean, literally, that's what it is. Now, each one of those has an element of truth in them because you can't tell a lie without an element of truth. The element of truth is what hooks you. So this is kind of what they do to trick you. God does not want us to murder one another over ideologies. Our own ego makes us try to impose our will upon somebody else where we have no right to do that. That is the plane of causation. Human ego, greed, the need to always be right and correct. Be wrong once in a while. Hey, if you've got an idea about something, present it. If it's not taken, who cares? Run with it. You don't have to impose it onto somebody else. Here's all you need to know under God, under the Creator's natural law. We're here. And I swear to God, let me just say, under God's natural law, as long as we don't initiate harm to others or steal, that's all we need to do. Religion initiates harm. It steals. Imposing your will on somebody else is coercion. These are things you're not supposed to do. And if this is what we're putting out into the collective of the world, what we're getting back is what we're putting out. I'm probably preaching to the choir for anyone listening to this show, but at the same time, we got to look at what the plane of causation is, because the plane of effects, everything going on right now is just a symptom, and humanity hasn't collectively properly diagnosed the problem. There was a video game called The Sims. Okay, SIMS, Sims, not Simps, Sims. And you turn the video game off. It was Xbox 360. You turn the video game off, go back on 12 or 13 hours later, or 24, 48 hours later, the characters in the game are still doing things, building things, doing whatever. I'm wondering if the maker of that game knew something. Like, this holographic universe that we live in, is this really a simulation? I got some interesting theories based on that. Whoever the kid is playing the video game that is us needs to become a nicer person. Anyway, whatever. But take another sip of my coffee. What if something were to happen to Mr. Trump in the new year? These are things that are going to make the right wing go completely nuts. And they want a civil war in this country. You can't institute a new world government with a United States. You can't. So they're dividing us in every way that they possibly can. That brings me to combat sports. This Logan Paul, what was he from Facebook? No, he was a YouTube influencer, right? I'm not going to sit there and break down his boxing skills, but the whole thing's been a clown show that's another spoke in the wheel of evil just to keep us distracted. Okay, human cockfighting. He's 27 fighting a 57-year-old Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson is an icon. And I really wish the Satanists of this world would leave that man in peace, because he's paid his dues. This is nothing but distraction-tainment. Now, I want you to think. Remember, this is the What If and Coincidental Theorist episode. I called this a few years ago, and I actually told my friend, Psychic Sonia, about it. And she said to remember that and write that down, because we are working on a book. And a lot of things she told me 2 years ago already have all happened this year. Poison air, all this stuff. Tornadoes, floods, bad weather. And they prophesized about this 2,000 years ago. But like I said before, if you're a being that lives for millions of years, if not completely immortal, couldn't you write down what's going to happen and then arrange for those things to happen? It's not that hard. But I had said, what I think, imagine this. We haven't had the obligatory white cop kills a black dude in a while. Okay, we haven't had that. And I say it is obligatory at this point. So we haven't had any race riots or any, bullshit like that. Nothing contrived, okay? Nothing in the news like that. But instead, you have an icon, and he's a human icon at this point. But he's beloved by all, as far as by many, but especially in the Black community. Now, what would happen if he got hurt in there, maybe badly, and this influencer, who's definitely part of the distraction-tainment industry, was paid off to say a certain something? He could say anything stupid. He could use the N-word, and then quote unquote, God forbid, I forbid, you forbid, Mike Tyson, he dies or something. Maybe he'll be on an island with Epstein and everybody else enjoying their lives, what's left of their lives. But wouldn't that create a race riot? Wouldn't that create racial tensions in this country? They're doing this in such a systematic way. I don't understand why more people aren't seeing it. I'm actually fascinated at the stupidity at this point. It's quite fascinating. In other stuff, like this is predictive programming. This is coincidental theorists. They've got all the fires going on in California, all those woods, all that wilderness. And it's really weird. You got all these fires going on in New Jersey in their woodland areas. Can't have people running to the woods. We need them in smart cities. Think about what they've done in the last year with predictive programming. Don't go in the water and don't get to an island, because there's these big black and white dolphins that'll attack your ship. And if you go into the woods, there's this Bigfoot guy that's in there. Definitely stay out of the woods. So this whole system is ran by nothing but fear. That's all it does. It plays on your fear. It plays on your prejudice. And until we as a world cannot have this prejudice and not be in a state of fear and in a state of contradiction, we're never going to rise from this. And we can rise from this darkness together if we unite, but we have to be able to see what the problem is. Let me take another sip of my coffee. Holy cow. I just almost did it again. Stipe versus John Jones tomorrow. I don't want to call that distraction-tainment, but again, give them free bread and circus and they'll never dream of revolting. Keep us distracted. Keep humanity in the 2D screen. Let's go to porn. Let's go to OnlyFans. Let's stay in our 2D screen. Let's not have real human connection. Stuff on Facebook. They're advertising things on Facebook to keep you from having human connection. It's ridiculous. I'm so glad I got out of that. I'm so glad I woke up. But 5G towers, 6G coming, 7G in the chamber, low-hanging satellites. Man, it's common sense. They send these signals out from the satellites to the towers, to the chips in your brain that Elon Musk, who's everyone's hero now, I'm allowed to use the R word. I don't like to use it, but I'm just wondering how programmed and retarded are people really? Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. And that's another thing. The Vikings were already here. The Knights Templars were already here. American Indians, when settlers came over, were murdered because they knew stuff. The Sea Peoples were already here. There's a better than average possibility that the ancient Phoenicians were already here. Why are they doing an ethnic cleansing over there? Why is the world okay with it? There's a difference between Israelis and Jewish people. True Jewish people are cousin bloods with the Palestinians. Israelis are people from Europe that were sent there by Satanists, Zionists. Why do we want to keep the Middle East. Okay, Iraq was where they, Mesopotamia, the Garden of Eden, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, by the Dead Sea. They were well named, right there in Palestine. What is it about that area of the world that scares humanity? What secrets lie over there that we could find out about our origins that would make us actually say, we're not having this shit, and just stand up and say no? Because this is what we're going to need to do. To gather up the courage to stand up and say no when we know the truth of humanity and we're not afraid to die. Game's over for these people. Game's over for these people. So, with that said, I'm hoping this is sounding okay, but this is how I think on some mornings. I don't have the clearest head this morning. I've been training hard. I'm sore. And that's something else you need to do too, is you need to stay fit. You need to train. And for my age, with my injuries, I'm training to be the most hardest person anyone ever tried to kill, as much as I can be. Okay. I would like to see freedom. I would like to see freedom in my lifetime. And I'm 53. In my lifetime, if I'm lucky, I might have another 30 years, maybe. But anyway, just be aware, okay? Be aware of predictive programming, because everything they're putting in the news is to program you. That's why it's called a television program, because it's programming you. It's telling lies to your vision. Television programming you. Predictive programming. Everything you hear on the effing news, I said effing, I didn't say the whole word, is doing nothing but to get you ready for what's coming, so you think it's normal. Well, it's not normal. Human slavery is not normal. This is why I don't vote. This is why I think everyone who votes is in a cult. The human condition since time immemorial has been nothing but human slavery. It used to be accepted for overt slavery. It was just commonly accepted. They even in the Bible tell you how to treat slaves. Slaves even argued with each other over whose slave master was the better slave master. We could stand up for and take our rights back. Well, we have to start realizing what's happening around us. We have to quiet our ego a little bit. Admit that we've maybe been lied to and wrong, especially if you're a real religious person that has spent a lot of time in this. I'm going to give you a martial arts analogy. I think all martial arts, and I talked about this in Violence and Ego, which I'm going to start reading from soon, so this will be a good segue into it. All martial arts have a use, okay? Let's go with the martial art of Aikido. Aikido was created in Japan, and it was made for samurai who were fighting. If you got disarmed, it would give you a final chance to possibly defend yourself against an armed opponent. So if you notice how the Aikidoka will do their attacks when they're uking for each other, the attack comes down like a slicing attack with the arm, and the Aikido practitioner who does small joint manipulation, grappling and throws and stuff like that will execute a technique that maybe would save them on the battlefield if we still fought with swords, or maybe if they were being attacked with a stick. So it's got real use. But as a martial art for unarmed combatives, I don't have a lot of use for it. I'd even say I don't want to call it complete trash, but if you've spent 20 years practicing Aikido, now remember, I've done martial arts my whole life, so I can speak on it. I've trained live, I've competed, I've been in real life situations. I know what uses it has and what uses it doesn't have. But if you've trained it for 20 years, and you've trained it with the mindset on how they teach it, with the belts they give you and this and that, and now you're this master in Aikido, and you're training it with the thought process of fighting an unarmed person against other martial arts that were made for completely unarmed fighting, you're going to go into a state of cognizant dissonance where some guy who's done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for 2.5 years and has a blue belt completely wipes the floor with you. This is kind of what we got with religious beliefs, with religion, and with politics, which is a religion. People don't want to be like, man, we were wrong. It had its use. It's done. I'm for a new world order with higher consciousness where there's no borders, one world civilization, where we deal with problems as they arise as a community, not some people who have special uniforms and shiny things. There's no military industrial complex. We understand natural law and we don't initiate harm or steal from others. Well, that if we understand that, then we know what not to do. We know what to do. We know what not to do is the most important thing, because that's the apophatic of it. What don't you do? Okay. If you don't steal, initiate harm by killing, murdering, raping, coercing, trespassing, theft, these are the things we're not allowed to do. Everything else we literally are allowed to do. I'm for New World Order. I'm just not for New World Government. Anyway, I want to just segue that into this. And if I get through the rest of Violence and Ego, and again, you can go to Amazon. You can type in Daniel Arnold, Violence and Ego. I could look it up right here. Hold on. Why not? Let me open up another. Let me just do this. Because I think these books, they're cheap, honestly. And I got it set up to where if you have a Kindle, I mean, you can like loan it or get it for free. So let me see what happens. If I type in Violence and Ego, which there's plenty of that in the world today, is there not? And then I type in my name, Daniel Arnold. I'm typing with one finger. Okay, Violence and Ego by Daniel Arnold. It's the first book that pops up. You're going to see the first version of it. You're going to the first book that pops up is the actual current version. The first version was with a company that I got, and it's out of print because I ended that one. I took it off of out of that company's hands. But you can get the book in paperback. You can get it for Kindle, and you can follow the author. You can click on this little picture of me in this hood, and it'll take you to my page. And you can get Rise from Darkness, Who Are They?, where I talk about spiritual things, because everything comes back to spirit. Violence and Ego, which talks about very physical things. And I even have something in there on, Introduction to Precision Rifle Marksmanship. That's been bought a couple times, probably by people to see if I know what the hell I'm talking about with that. And I do. But yeah, go get the book on Amazon. You can do it that way. I'm going to start reading on. If I have to stop and if I get through with this, I'll continue ranting. That's why it's called a morning rant and not an evening champagne with Dan. It's morning coffee rant. I'm feeling very ranty today. I'm just controlling myself. Okay. So I'm going to just start here. No instructor can train you in any techniques that will protect you from an ambush. That is why it's called an ambush. You didn't see it coming. Things to consider. Your attacker chose you at that point in time for a reason. Maybe you were distracted by thoughts of what you had to do next. Everybody's busy. Advice: get out of your cell phone to see who is around you. This is referred to as situational awareness. If something about someone you see looks wrong, it most likely is wrong. Pay attention to that gut feeling. I've talked about this before. Maybe you appeared scared, unconfident, or in a general state of nervousness, which is detectable since 90% of all communication is nonverbal. All right, let me give you a little story here, because this just happened like the day before yesterday. I'm on a machine that's back to back with another machine at the gym. Some douchebag comes over and slams a weight into the thing, shaking the machine. I waited for him to get on the machine, and 8 slams of weights later, he realized maybe he shouldn't have done that. He must have judged me poorly at that point. So you got to be aware. Maybe I look distracted. Maybe I look too soft with my long hair or something. I don't know what it is. But anyway, advice: walk confidently like you have a purpose and pay attention to your surroundings. The bushes, the trees, vehicles blocking the view of your vehicle in some way. Look for blind spots. We all played hide and seek or got you as kids. Look for areas that you would try to surprise somebody from. Like a friend that you want to scare or surprise. Take note of the weather and ground conditions. Is there snow or ice? Wear shoes made for those conditions to mitigate the risk of falling. Let me break here. All I see people doing is walking around in flip-flops and Crocs. I see guys at the gym throwing punches on a bag in Crocs. Get the hell out of here, man. All right, anyway, just good for avoiding injuries in general. Don't hit your automatic vehicle door unlock from 50 feet away. Make sure you're close. Wait until you're right by your vehicle to auto unlock it. If your attacker has pre-selected you and is awaiting your return, hearing your vehicle door click will give him a heads up that you are approaching. Have your car key firmly pressed between your thumb and index finger for use as an improvised weapon, not between your knuckles in a fist. That's going to mess up your knuckles bad. You'll break a knuckle and cut your hand open. You would be more likely to injure yourself more than your attacker in that way. Remember, even if you are armed, you're surely not going to be walking to your vehicle with your firearm at the low ready, just waiting for an attack. Already having an improvised weapon in your hand will buy you the time you need to get to your firearm. So train on using this weapon, or tool, I should say, with your non-dominant hand to keep your dominant hand free for your firearm. All of this is referred to as environmental awareness and situational awareness. Okay, your gut instincts. Your gut instincts are the product of thousands of years of evolution, dating back to when humans really had to hunt for our food, hunting animals like the woolly mammoth that were as likely to kill us as we were to kill them. As humans, we are basic animals also and aren't exempt from the food chain. Our ancestors had to stay on guard from carnivorous predators like saber-toothed tigers, large ice age cats and dogs and bears that wanted to eat us. Our brain and opposing thumbs have allowed us to become the dominant species on the planet, but we are relatively weak compared to a lot of the other mammals we have coexisted with throughout history. So at our core, we are still part of the animal kingdom and do have instincts, gut feelings. The problem is we become more civilized, but in doing so, our senses have become dulled. Law enforcement officers, corrections and police, along with some military personnel, are attuned or reconnected to those primal instincts out of necessity quite a bit more than our civilian counterparts. This is the truth, okay? This is actually the truth. You do have to be tuned into some of this stuff because those are dangerous jobs. Okay, this can actually create some other problems for law enforcement and military personnel. That's a lot of left brain, lizard brain stuff to deal with. In fact, I became more than a little over attuned at one point because I thought everyone was lying to me or had some sinister motive. Man, I found out that is wrong. I eventually got over that, but remember, that's not good either. Oh, well, my circus and my monkeys to deal with. More on that later. Back on topic. The next time you're at the mall or coffee shop or anywhere that people gather, just sit back and do some people watching. You will be able to tell who is sad, who's happy, who's aggravated, who's impatient, and distracted. I probably looked distracted at the gym the other day. Maybe the dude just wanted to get my attention. I don't know. As I stated earlier, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of all communication is nonverbal. I can't count how many times while driving I sensed a person's eyes boring into me, either at a stoplight or driving next to me, only to look over, and sure enough, they were looking right at me. This is something everyone reading this book can probably relate to. Police Academy footnote. I remember when going through the Police Academy in 1997, one of the instructors talked about gut feelings and instincts. I'll never forget how he put it. When on duty, pay attention. Pay attention to your danger instincts. Remember back to when you were a child. Pay attention to that childlike fear. It will not betray you. It will warn you of danger, and it is rarely wrong. Let me break here for 1 second. I still got plenty of time. You know, all the perfumes and shampoos and all the different perfumes that people put on, we put on ourselves not to have our natural scent. Again, that's more shame-based nonsense. Where our natural pheromones are actually being, our natural pheromones are actually being covered. Okay, I'm not saying walk around stinky or anything. I'm just saying all this stuff in modern day life has taken away that animal instinctive edge that we have. People are in their phones. People are on their screens. People aren't returning to nature. Go walk around barefoot. Go get in nature. Continuing. So this next part is called wargaming. Okay, and I want to get through both these parts that are coming up because they're important. Okay, this is a valuable tool for protecting and preparing yourself for violence or an active threat. It works like this. Any place you decide to war game at, be it your home, your school, your place of employment, wherever, ask yourself these questions. What would I do in a dangerous scenario? Where are my escapes? Where can I hide? What barrier around here would stop a bullet? What can I use as a weapon? By playing this mental game with yourself, should a similar scenario begin to unfold, you will react faster physically because cognitively, you have already done it. It works psychologically for the same reason that many psychologists advise people against revealing their personal goals. For instance, no one outside my family knows I am writing this book. If I told my friends I was writing a book, I could run the risk of my brain being satisfied by my ego that I already have accomplished it. Hence, the book may not ever have been written. So that's just on wargaming, where you go and you wargame, think of those things. Think of them. How are you going to stay strapped? How are you going to carry? What tools do you have on you that you can use to defend yourself? Any place you're at on a regular basis, what's the normal stuff going on around there? So that way something abnormal will jump out at you, okay? Active shooter responses. This is very important. Now, keep in mind, I wrote this book 8 years ago, but this is still very important. If asocial violence is predatory violence and social violence is ego-driven, the tribe is watching violence, then the active shooter violence is a combination of both. Above, I briefly mentioned being in an active shooter situation. I would be remiss if I did not cover this very real and increasingly tragic threat Americans face. With a population of over 310 million people in our country versus the numbers of actual victims of active shooters, in any given year, the chances are still actually pretty slim that anyone reading this book will meet their end in this way. And that's even true right now. But I think that's going to be increasing in the future, in the very next couple of years, actually. With that being stated, every time we turn on the news, we watch another active shooter incident that's being reported. As a result of this, more and more law-abiding citizens are opting to exercise their Second Amendment rights to obtain concealed carry permits, CCW, to legally carry a firearm for protection. The one thing that is concerning to me about this is, are people practicing to become proficient in using the firearms that they now can legally carry? I'm going to break for a quick second. Right before all this, social unrest came, and all these different problems are coming up in the world, simultaneously, many states went to just go ahead and constitutional carry. Like they care about our rights. Do the math. And there's a lot of instructors that got put out of business because now the people don't get training. Okay, continuing. In feudal Japan, when samurai faced one another in combat, the samurai with the fastest sword draw was often the victor. They would practice the draw cut for thousands of hours, that is, getting the first cut when removing their sword out of its sheath and then in position for combat. They were often facing other similarly trained and disciplined combatants. The average CCW training class is a 10-hour course, usually completed in a single day. After safety considerations, basic marksmanship skills, and self-defense laws are covered. That usually leaves only a few hours of actual range time for live practice and qualification. Some states have shortened this requirement to a mere 6 hours, and this was back then. Most CCW permit holders carry a semi-automatic pistol with a 7 to 15 round magazine capacity, depending on the caliber of the pistol they are carrying. Most active shooters commit their heinous acts of semi-automatic rifle that have 30 round magazine capacity. The recent tragedy in Orlando, Florida nightclub also puts an exclamation point on the fact that these deranged individuals very often plan out their attacks. They will have every advantage over you for a multitude of reasons. One, if the shooter has seen you already with your pistol out, your chances of winning a shootout with him are slim. Rifles are more accurate at a distance and have a higher penetration capacity. This means if you jump behind an object for cover, a rifle bullet may still go right through it and hit you. Number two, the shooter most certainly will have the element of surprise on his side or her side. He is counting on that to help him, and it always does. Number three, the shooter has the intent to kill, I should say murder, because there's a difference between the two, as many people as possible, unless he is there to kill specific people, workplace violence, in which case he will still kill as many non-targets who try to stop him. I can go on and on, but the point is if you carry a sidearm for self-defense, it is critical that you can draw it and have it on target from your method of carry, hip, holster, shoulder, whatever, as quickly and smoothly as possible. Our weapons have evolved since the days of the samurai, but our methods of obtaining proficiency have not. Repetition is the key factor. So this will take a lot of practice, lots of reps, drawing, moving offline, and accurately shooting. Even for off-duty law enforcement officers, especially uniformed officers who carry open, and you're not carrying open when you're off duty. You're usually concealing it. There's no clothing garment to have to clear. That's one extra step that needs to be practiced if you're going to be drawing it from a concealed spot, not just from open carry. Okay, I'm not advocating for any particular tactic, firearm choice, or method of carry. I am, however, advocating that you choose a tactic and then practice it that way a lot. Okay, the experts want to argue over the minutia. Do it this way, do it that way. There are some better ways than others. But once you pick a way, stick with it and get really, really good at it. Okay? Purchasing ammunition and going to the range all the time can be a very expensive way to practice that most people can't afford, but practicing your weapon draw, specific movements while dry firing along with magazine speed reloads can all be done in the privacy of your own home. Then when you do go on the firing range, do all the same drills while actually shooting and hopefully hitting the target. Tip, never move faster than you can accurately and safely shoot. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Even if you have dry fire through a specific drill 1,000 times at home, you should always start off practicing it slow when at the range live firing. Safety, 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 safety. I mean, that's all I can say when you start getting into this. Practice immediate action drills for weapon malfunctions, for tool malfunctions, which is when you pull the trigger and hear a click instead of bang, or don't feel the weapon recoil. Because this is very important. I might get into a whole episode about this. This is actually so important. Here's the thing. I'm going to go over adrenal stress response probably next week because there's going to be a lot of adrenalized stuff going on. And you may not hear a bang. You may not hear a bang because you're going to be so intently focused. You're going to experience auditory exclusion, visual exclusion. Okay. So besides the bang, what else do you have? The feedback from the actual gun itself. So if you don't hear the bang and there is no recoil, that means it didn't shoot. Okay, you're experiencing auditory exclusion from an adrenal response. And also, you got to practice on slap rack, changing magazines. These are all things that need to be done. People think that a gun makes you safe and that you're, God with a gun. You're not. You really got to train it. And it's even more important to train it because this is a tool that can instantly take somebody's life. And you don't want to do this to the wrong person, right? Be rough on your equipment during training. Your magazines, your holsters, weapon, etc. If something is going to break or malfunction, it is much more preferable for it to happen in the relative safety of a training environment as opposed to when things get real. All right. I'm going to end this with one final little story. I was in the police academy, and I'm going to get totally into adrenal stress response next week for those who, and give some advice on what you might need to do and how you can go about getting some training to be able to deal with the plane of effects. Because we're not dealing with, we're not dealing with the plane of causation very well at all. You deal with the plane of effects, at least, for those people who are, a little worried about that. You should be able to effectively do both. But I was in the police academy, and they, of course, have a Top Gun. And so they have this Top Gun competition at the range. And I had been shooting really good that day. I've always been pretty good at it. I was going up against a guy who was an Army competition shooter, and I was doing very well. This was the final match for first and second place. And we had to shoot these balloons, and I won't even get into all of it, but I slapped the magazine in, and the whole magazine fell apart. And while I'm training, it was the last magazine. So my equipment failed. He popped his balloons and he won. He took first place in it. They were joking around. Hey, Chief, do you remember who took second place last time in the Top Gun competition? No, I don't remember. So they messed with me. But then the trainer came up to me and said that was way better to happen here on the range than it is to happen out on the streets. So be rough on your equipment. And I'm going to get into adrenal stress response next week. Hopefully this wasn't too much of a ramble. I don't want to have morning coffee rambles. I want to do morning coffee rants. I did not prepare for today whatsoever. But anyways, until next week, man, I love everybody. Stay safe, stay strapped, stay frosty, be prepared mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and live in the moment and love people. That's all I can say. Stay safe.